Kính thưa quý vị khán thính giả của chương trình PhoBolsaTV, sau khi có buổi gặp gỡ cộng đồng của ông Đại sứ Hoa Kỳ tại Việt Nam Daniel Kritenbrink, thì giờ đây sẽ có một buổi gặp gỡ riêng với báo chí. Hy vọng là sẽ có những câu hỏi nhiều hơn nữa liên quan tới công việc của ông ở Việt Nam cũng như là quan hệ Việt Mỹ. Hồi nãy thì chúng ta cũng đã nghe một lần nữa là đã nghe các dân biểu Hoa Kỳ tổ chức đã đưa lên rất nhiều những cái vấn đề liên quan tới dân chủ, nhân quyền cho Việt Nam, đặc biệt là cái trường hợp cụ thể của anh Michael Phương Nguyễn hiện nay đang bị giam ở Việt Nam. Ngược lại thì khi ông Daniel Kritenbrink trình bày thì ông nói khá nhiều tới cái vấn đề mậu dịch giữa hai nước, cũng như là những cái vấn đề khác như là giáo dục, nhân đạo, những cái giải quyết về chiến tranh giữa hai nước như là vấn đề tẩy rửa chất độc màu da cam, cũng như là đưa những cái hài cốt của lính Mỹ về nước vẫn là cái công việc tiếp tục. Giờ đây thì chúng tôi hy vọng là sẽ có đặt ra rất là nhiều những câu hỏi liên quan tới quan hệ giữa hai nước cũng như tình hình ở Việt Nam hiện nay. Bây giờ thì mọi người đã tập vào và cuộc họp báo sẽ bắt đầu.
In no particular order, please raise your hand and then I'll try to call on you. And then what we're going to do is we're going to try to give everyone a chance to go one round before you ask the second round of question, okay? So anh Vũ Hoàng Lân, go ahead.
Dạ, Lân từ PhoBolsaTV, tôi xin hỏi tiếng Việt để nhờ anh dịch lại.
Okay, I'll do my best, but forgive me if I...
Hiện nay thì cái dịch bệnh virus corona đang lan tràn rất là nhiều, và chúng tôi nghe rất là nhiều những tin tức có thật có giả. Thì trong vai trò là đại sứ của Hoa Kỳ tại Việt Nam, ông có thể cho biết những cái thông tin mà ông biết được, đặc biệt là vấn đề liên quan tới vấn đề ở Việt Nam hiện nay như thế nào. Ông có những cái lời khuyên nào đối với các công dân Việt Nam ở đây muốn du lịch về Việt Nam hay không ạ?
Okay, I think you understand that. The question to the ambassador is about the coronavirus, and right now it's spreading really fast and spreading really wide. Asking the question for the ambassador is, from your point of view, what is along all the information that being spread, there's some facts, there's some misinformation. From the ambassador, what are the facts that you know about the coronavirus, in particular in Vietnam, and what are your advices to Vietnamese Americans here who are looking to travel to Vietnam, Mr. Ambassador?
Well, thank you very much for your question. It's a very important topic. And are we going to do interpretation here, or we just go straight?
Do you think we need to? Do you have one thing I need to translate or no?
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
Okay. So thanks very much. Look, this is a very important issue. The COVID-19 or coronavirus issue is something that we're following very closely. Here's what we know: there are 16 confirmed cases in Vietnam as we speak. I will say that we are quite pleased and impressed by the government of Vietnam's actions on the coronavirus situation thus far. I always like to emphasize to my friends that inside the U.S. mission to Vietnam, our health team is our single largest team. We have more than 100 professional staff dedicated to health issues in Vietnam on a daily basis. And what they do is they're trying to build Vietnam's health capacity, including Vietnam's ability to fight, to detect, and then fight the spread of pandemic disease. So they've been preparing for this day and helping Vietnam prepare for some time. We've been impressed by the level of cooperation on the part of the government of Vietnam and the level of transparency that the government of Vietnam has shown. We believe that Vietnam is taking this situation very seriously. They've adopted a very proactive stance. They've coordinated well with our team. We have a particularly large presence from the Centers for Disease Control, in Vietnam. And they advise me that they're pleased with the level of cooperation and transparency. We're going to stay in very close touch with the authorities in Vietnam to continue to monitor this situation and assist them in any way we can. We're assisting by providing technical advice on laboratory techniques on how to track cases. We have received requests from the government of Vietnam for additional test kits, for personal protective equipment and the like, and we're working to respond to all of those requests. As far as our official guidance for travel to Vietnam, there's been no change to our standing travel guidance for Vietnam. I think it would be appropriate and responsible for everyone to continue to follow the guidance that's put out by the U.S. government on the general COVID-19 or coronavirus situation. For example, you can go to the website of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and you'll find the latest guidance there. So there's no change. regarding our standard travel guidance to Vietnam, but we do, and the Centers for Disease Control encourages all travelers to follow certain general precautions, right? Which is namely, wash your hands. All the health experts tell us the number one thing that all of us can do to protect our health is wash our hands. If you're sick, don't go to work, don't go to school, go see your doctor. If you need to cough, don't cough into your hand, cough into your elbow or a tissue, and then wash your hands. It's the number one thing that we can all do. So it's those basic precautions that we're encouraging everyone to follow. But I'm sure, as you've seen, the entire U.S. government, including the U.S. State Department and our missions overseas, we're tracking this issue very closely. We're committed to assisting the governments in responding to these challenges and to assisting in every way possible.
Okay, and just so that people know who I have on the list, so I have anh David Trần, and then người Việt, and then chú Lê Kiến Trúc, so anh David Trần trước, and then I'll continue to take notes.
Can I just mention one other thing on the COVID-19 situation, because it might be of interest, particularly here in Little Saigon. Among the 16 cases in Vietnam, one of the confirmed cases was a Vietnamese-American gentleman who had traveled to Vietnam after transiting Wuhan, China, and I'm happy to report that our team has been in very close touch with him throughout his hospitalization and treatment in Saigon. We think he's received excellent treatment. My understanding is he's improving considerably. I would also say that we're going to stay, as I mentioned a moment ago, we're going to continue to stay in very close touch with the Vietnamese authorities on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to David Trần.
Ông cũng là người thứ 7 đại sứ toàn quyền Hoa Kỳ tại Việt Nam. Vấn đề nhân quyền và nhân đạo đối với chúng tôi đã quá chờ đợi mong mỏi rồi. Thì chúng tôi vẫn thấy là ông vẫn đặt tiêu chí đó lên hàng đầu. Nhưng mà chúng tôi muốn có một câu hỏi rất là thực tế. Chính sách của Hoa Kỳ như thế nào nếu chiến tranh biển đảo giữa Việt Nam và Trung Quốc, Hoa Kỳ sẽ đối phó và sẽ làm việc như thế nào đối với chính quyền Việt Nam và Trung Quốc? Đó là câu hỏi của chúng tôi, đại diện cho Việt Today từ San Jose và Sài Gòn TV.
So he's representing Việt Today and Saigon TV. So the question to the ambassador is, you talk about the 25 years of normalizations of relationship between the U.S. and Vietnam. You talk a lot about human rights that remains a priority for the U.S. But he wants to ask a specific question dealing with the maritime dispute, and what if, in the scenario of war broke out between China and Vietnam, what will the U.S. do? What will the U.S. foreign policy be in working with both of those countries in that situation? Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question. We're deeply concerned about what's been happening on maritime issues in the region, particularly in the South China Sea or the East Sea. We're deeply concerned that China has taken a number of aggressive moves that we think are deeply unsettling in the region, and that we think are carried out in ways that are contrary to international law. The United States of America continues to believe that all disputes in the South China Sea need to be resolved peacefully and in accordance with international law. We think all claims need to be based in international law. We think that there should be unimpeded commerce and freedom of navigation and overflight respected throughout the South China Sea. We've also spoken out very forcefully against China's aggressive moves to impede the long-standing energy exploration and development activities of countries in the region, including Vietnam. Our general policy on the South China Sea involves three primary lines of effort. One, in terms of our diplomacy, we work with like-minded partners like Vietnam and other friends in ASEAN and other allies, partners, and friends in the region to advance the shared principles that I've just mentioned. Focus on international law, peaceful resolution of disputes, freedom of navigation, unimpeded commerce. Secondly, we work diligently to improve and enhance and increase the maritime capacity of partner countries like Vietnam, but not just Vietnam, also Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and others. Again, it's our belief that if every country in the region, including Vietnam, has the ability to understand what's happening in its maritime domain and to defend its interest, that will contribute to stability, and it will raise the threshold to conflict, thereby making conflict less likely. And thirdly, the United States of America continues to invest in our own military capabilities and carry out our own military activities on a regular basis, designed to enforce our rights under international law and thereby protect those rights for all other countries. And that's why you'll continue to see regular freedom of navigation operations and other routine operations in the South China Sea. So these issues in the maritime realm, particularly in the South China Sea, are very important. We're deeply concerned, as is much of the region, over Chinese aggressive behavior, and we believe through the policy and the strategy that I've just outlined that we can contribute to stability and prevent conflict in the region, and that is our goal.
And before I call on the next reporter, I also want to say if any members of Congress have anything to chime in, please feel free to. So next I have Người Việt Daily News.
Yeah, very quick one. You know, the matter of human rights has been hashed to death.
Yes.
Okay, but you know, human rights guys like Trần Huỳnh Duy Đức and Michael Nguyen, have you ever personally visited with them, and how are they now?
I have not met personally with Michael Nguyen, but my staff meets with him regularly, and up to date has met monthly and sometimes more frequently with him. What was the first case that you mentioned?
Trần Huỳnh Duy Đức. Duy Đức, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I've not met with that person. I don't know if I'm familiar with the details of that case. I'd be happy to learn more. But let me just emphasize a couple of the points that I made in the town hall. First of all, we're committed to advocating aggressively for the rights of American citizens in Vietnam, including those who have been detained, such as Michael Nguyen. I was honored to meet with his wife, Helen, their 4 daughters, and other members of the family today. I remain grateful for all of the strong support and collaboration from the members of Congress who are here today, and as we discussed in the town hall, we're going to do everything we can to bring Michael home as quickly as possible. As I also mentioned in the town hall, our strategy on human rights is twofold. We continue to advocate for individual cases. I carry with me a card in my wallet that has some of our top priority individual cases. We advocate on their behalf for improved treatment, for Vietnam to respect its own laws and to respect the universal rights of these individuals. We've had some success, but the fact that we have this list and I carry this card shows that we have a long way to go, and there are many, many problems in Vietnam. And I think, as Representative Lowenthal laid out, I think the biggest concern we have is that the number of arrests, detentions, harassments, and jailing of activists has increased over the last 4 years, and we're deeply concerned about that. Secondly, we also advocate for systemic legal and regulatory reform in Vietnam as well to improve the situation.
May I come up there and take a snapshot of your card? You've been talking about that card over and over again.
We can do that later.
Yeah.
Now, next question is nhà báo Lý Kiến Trúc.
Good afternoon, sir. And my name is Kiến Trúc Lý, Editor-in-Chief of Vietnamese Văn hóa Online, California. I have some questions for the Ambassador to Vietnam, Sir Daniel Kritenbrink. I speak English, Vietnamese and English, and the question.
Dạ chú đọc bây giờ chú đọc
The one question.
Dạ chú đọc tiếng.
Sự kiện diễn ra ở khu vực bãi tư chính hồi đầu tháng 7 cho thấy dường như có sự thiếu sót về tình báo về sự xâm nhập của tàu HD Trung Quốc đến thâm nhập vào bãi biển Việt Nam. Theo đại sứ thì khu vực bãi tư chính đó nằm trong vòng 200 hải lý của Việt Nam hay nằm ngoài vùng biển quốc tế?
Yes.
Number question.
Oh no, just one question at a time, please. So the question is, what happened at the Vanguard Bank at the beginning of July 2019 proved that there was no communication on the intelligence concerning Chinese ships openly and defiantly came into the region to look for oil. How do you think about, or what do you think about the Vanguard Bank? Is it part of Vietnam's 200 nautical mile economic privileges, or does it belong to international waters?
Thank you for your question. We're very concerned about the situation at Vanguard Bank. As I mentioned in my remarks a short while ago, we continue to remain concerned with Chinese behavior that is clearly designed to impede Vietnam's long-standing energy exploration and development activities, including at Vanguard Bank. We think it's unacceptable for China to take such action. We think that Chinese actions are designed to prevent the countries of Southeast Asia, including Vietnam, from accessing trillions of dollars worth of resources in the South China Sea. We also think that Chinese action is designed to intimidate international energy companies out of the South China Sea and thereby force claimant countries, including Vietnam, to partner with only Chinese companies. We think this is unacceptable behavior. We've stated so publicly. We've stated so privately, both in Beijing and Hanoi and elsewhere in the region, and will continue to do so.
Okay, before I call on the next report, I understand.
Number two.
Oh, no, there's no number two. Please have a seat. I understand the members of Congress, a few members of Congress have to leave. Thank you, Congresswoman Katie Porter, and thank you, Congressman Hollywood, for being here. Thank you, Katie. So I'm going to go around.
Could I make one comment before our members of Congress leave? I just want to thank them all again. Your members of Congress today made this opportunity available for me to meet with you. I'm very grateful to them. I've learned so much through this interaction, and I just wanted to, again, to thank Representative Lowenthal, Representative Porter, Representative Ruda for organizing this opportunity. It's been tremendously useful to me. I thank you all. I look forward to continuing to partner with you. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very much. Now
Thank
we
you.
go to Derek
Nice
for
to
the
see you.
next question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Cộng đồng Việt Nam vẫn quan tâm rất nhiều đến nghĩa trang quân đội Biên Hòa cũ là nghĩa trang miền Nam bây giờ đó, và họ không có nhiều thông tin về cái việc là chính quyền Việt Nam có dễ dàng hay khó khăn cho cái việc mà người thân ở tại Hoa Kỳ về thăm viếng và tu sửa hay không. Thì riêng ông đại sứ, ông có biết về điều này, ông có thể chia sẻ với đồng hương ở đây.
So the question is on the Bien Hoa military cemetery, as it's called the Penang Cemetery now in Vietnam. A lot of the Vietnamese American overseas here, they don't have enough information to clearly understand how difficult it is or how easy it is for them to go back to the Bien Hoa military cemetery to visit graves of their relatives or to restore. So could the ambassador share what you know of what's going on with the Bien Hoa cemetery and your response to family member here wanting to make the visit there?
Thank you very much. I've had the honor of visiting Bien Hoa Cemetery twice. I was deeply moved to be able to do so. And one of the reasons why I went is to support the activities by many Vietnamese Americans to help refurbish the graves that are in Bien Hoa Cemetery to properly pay respects to all of the fallen there. I was particularly grateful to work closely with the Vietnamese American Foundation and my friend Nguyen Doc Tang in those efforts, and I'm happy to report that virtually all of the graves in the Bien Hoa Cemetery have now been refurbished, and I think conditions for the fallen soldiers there have improved dramatically. I was able to visit twice, and I know that the work on refurbishing these graves has gone forward very smoothly over the last few years. There have, of course, been challenges and concerns as well, but I think we've made tremendous progress. What I don't have clarity on is either how easy or challenging it is for individual Americans to go there to pay their respects. But I will ask that question and I will get back to you. I simply don't know, but I can say I'm happy to have been able to go twice myself, and I'm very happy to report the great work that's taken place there, that I think the conditions in the cemetery have improved considerably. Representative Lowenthal, I know you've been very active on this issue as well. I didn't know if you had any comments.
Yeah, I just think that the Bien Hoa Cemetery is critically important. One of the reasons, not only for the restoration of a national cemetery for those from the Republic of Vietnam who gave their lives, I think there are over 16,000 who are buried there, but I think also, in my experience, that the diaspora, all of us who are here in the United States, all of you that are here in the United States, there is a definite disconnect between the Vietnamese government and the diaspora. I was hoping that the Bien Hoa Cemetery, the restoration, would lead to a restoration of the relationship between the diaspora. Because when I was in Vietnam, being honest, this was about 4 years ago, it seemed to me that the government looked at the diaspora as the enemy. There was the war, and you lost the war, and you're wrong. That attitude has to change. You know, we are all part of the international community. I think and so I'm concerned that, and I was hoping that Bien Hoa would be the vehicle by which the government would see that the diaspora, the people who are not the enemy. And so I'm just wondering how that's going in terms of that relationship between the diaspora, especially, and the government itself in terms of their foreign
Yes, sir. Sir, I think that's a great point. I think that overall we have seen tremendous progress in terms of reconciliation between the United States and Vietnam. I think the place where the most work remains is between Vietnam and the Vietnamese American community, which I think you've eloquently stated. I too believe that work on incredibly important and symbolically and emotionally important issues like the Bien Hoa Cemetery is incredibly meaningful and can have a long-term positive impact. I'm still hopeful that will be the case. I have been gratified to see that this work has taken place very quietly and very successfully, and we've been honored to support it. I do appreciate the question about how to visit there, and I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out. I will say as well, Representative Lowenthal, we continue to be interested in ways that we could further promote reconciliation between our two sides, and if you or members of the community have other ideas, we think it, as you've said, it really is important. I'm hopeful that Bien Hoa will still contribute to that. Thank you.
Okay. So next I have Derek Nguyễn Hoàng Dũng, followed by anh Đoàn Trọng. So Derek Nguyễn Hoàng Dũng.
If I may sit so that I don't block the cameras.
Please.
My name is Derek Nguyen, representing Viet TV and Little Saigon Radio. I would like to first thank Congressman Lowenthal for your service and for your leadership for the opportunity today. Thanks, Phong, for providing the logistic, and thank you to Ambassador Kritenbrink for representing us well. And
thank you, sir.
For your time here today. In the town hall meeting, the one message that we have heard loud and clear was the issue of human rights and religious freedom. But in here with the press, we begin to hear of China's aggression.
Yes, sir.
With your background experience, sir, how do you balance your work in pressuring the Vietnam government to respect the human rights and religious freedom rights, as opposed to balancing it with helping them to side with us to rise up to China's aggression?
Yes, sir. Derek, thank you very much. I think that's a fantastic question. I appreciate your asking it. What I would say is we have a comprehensive partnership with Vietnam. That's the formal designation that we've made for this relationship that we have, and I think it represents accurately what we're doing. We're engaged in so many areas together. Today in the town hall, I think we rightfully focused mostly on human rights, because I think that probably best represents some of the concerns in the Vietnamese American community. But this is a broad-based relationship in which we're engaged on security, economics, energy, the environment, health, and many other issues. Much of that engagement is very positive and productive. And like any relationship, we also have challenges, problems, and concerns. I would simply say that our goal in this comprehensive partnership is to do all of these things at the same time. I think it's natural in all of our relationships, whether between countries or individuals. We have commonalities and common interests, and we have differences. It's no different with Vietnam. We have a very active and productive dialogue vis-a-vis our common interests in preserving peace and stability in the region and countering some of the threats and unproductive behavior that we see from China. And that's one of the common interests that I think helps drive our cooperation. But just because we have common interests vis-a-vis China, and just because we cooperate to counter those challenges, it doesn't preclude us from also very frankly and candidly addressing our differences. So we do both. We do them at the same time. Sometimes we even do them in the same meeting. I think it's representative of, I think, the maturity that now describes the U.S.-Vietnam relationship. We do have difficult issues. We do have a painful and at times tragic history. We don't shy away from that. And I think this relationship is mature enough and advanced enough now that we can do all of these things. We can advance our cooperation together on common interests, whether it's economics and trade or security in the South China Sea, and we can continue to very candidly address our human rights differences. I'm confident we can continue to do that going forward.
Thank you. So I have ký giả Đoàn Trọng and then Nguyễn Kim Bình. So ký giả Đoàn Trọng.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Tom Dong. I work for the SES TV. And my shows come from Monday to Friday every morning from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m.
Fantastic.
Before that, I was in the Little Saigon TV. I was present for the Vietnamese reporter, attending in the two summit with the president, with the Kim Jong-un and APEC. My issue, regarding about ambassador, and embassy of U.S. We are the U.S. citizen.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you so much. And we work, for the people who every single day listen to us and want to follow us by the Vietnamese language. And they are, the U.S. citizen too.
Yes, sir.
My question regarding about your lack of the relationship and the help, for the Vietnamese reporter and on the media when we do the duty in the Vietnam. My trip to what there, and I compare with the old, the American, media, they treat us so much different. So only one way we can come to the foreign department of the Vietnam Socialist government, and I need your help. I need your embassy regarding about the Vietnamese media located in this area for all over in the U.S. We need to bring up all the message, all the activity, So when we come there, we come to Hanoi, we come to Da Nang for APEC. We are the embassy, help us. No one give it back to us. Now I got a good chance to meet you, and I hope you build up the relationship between the media in here to the embassy, but we can get it together. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I wasn't aware of the concerns that you mentioned. Let's make sure we exchange cards. I'd be happy to work with you. We think that all American media ought to have the opportunity to cover events in Vietnam openly and candidly, and I'd be happy to work with you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nguyễn Kim Bình, and then followed by Khải Đào. Sir, Nguyễn Kim Bình.
Yes, just two very quick questions.
Please.
First of all, about the trip by Mr. Nguyễn Phú Trọng.
Yes.
Planned for last year. Do you still expect that there will be a trip this year? And second question is about the status of renegotiating the repatriation agreement between the U.S. and Vietnam. How is that going? Will that happen anytime soon?
Thank you for your question. So on the first question, in February of 2019, when President Trump visited Hanoi for the Hanoi summit with Kim Jong-un, we did have the opportunity for a series of very productive meetings with the Vietnamese leadership. The President met both with General Secretary and President Nguyen Phu Cham and also with Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc. In his meeting with President Nguyen Phu Cham, he did invite President Cham to visit the United States. We're still hopeful. We're still hopeful that we could realize such a visit. I certainly don't have anything to announce here today, but it remains our hope that we could host the Vietnamese president in the United States someday soon, and we'll continue to work towards that. On the repatriation agreement, I assume this is related to the issue that we call the removals issue. Let me say a little bit about that. I know that this is a complex issue. I know this is an emotional issue for certain members of our community here in the United States. What I can say is this, is that my job as the American ambassador to Vietnam on this issue is when someone is identified by a U.S. immigration judge for removal from the United States and return to Vietnam, our job in the U.S. Embassy is to request from the government of Vietnam travel documents for those individuals to be returned to Vietnam. There are more, as I understand it, there are more than 8,000 individuals, Vietnamese nationals, who've been identified for removal from the United States and returned to Vietnam, and that number has been 8,000 or so for many, many years. There have been returns taking place every year for many years. I think the rate of returns has increased slightly over the last couple of years. On the issue of the 2008 agreement and how it treats individuals who came to the United States either before or after 1995, the situation is this. The 2008 agreement formally covered the procedures that would be used to return nationals to Vietnam who had come to the United States after 1995. So that agreement does not cover anyone who came to the United States before 1995. But that agreement does not preclude the return of anyone who came to the United States prior to 1995. And the U.S. government position has always been that under international law, a government should return or should accept for return nationals when they're identified for return by the United States. So there's nothing in those agreements that precludes the return of someone who's come to the United States before 1995. There have been returns for pre-1995 cases, and those returns do continue. There's currently no formal agreement that covers those procedures, but the returns happen nonetheless. There are discussions about the possibility of a new agreement that would cover the procedures. I don't have anything here to announce on that today, but I would say, irrespective if there is an agreement or not, the U.S. government position is that every country has a responsibility to return, to receive the return of its citizens. We do believe that it would be useful to have an agreement that would outline those procedures, but even in the absence of that agreement, there are returns that are taking place.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on that and just say that there is legislation being proposed in the Congress to codify that 2008 agreement and to deny the ability to deport anybody before 1995 back to Vietnam. That's being proposed. We do not know whether it will pass. We do not, but our delegation will be supporting it to clarify that issue, which is very unclear, and the Congress has never taken a stand on that. And so we're going to try to do that to clearly define that the intention of that, we believe, was not to deport anyone, even though there was always certainly the right to do that, but not to deport anyone who came to the United States prior to. We also, to 1995, we also, as part of that legislation, again, it hasn't been passed, it's just now being drafted, it will be introduced in the near future, is to provide those people who had minor kinds of infractions, who had lost their green cards, who had come here before 1995, that we would like to reinstate their ability to have a green card and to put them on a track to be able to have citizenship again. That's really where we are now. But that's not the policy of the United States, it's just the policy of what a number of us in Congress want to do.
Thank you, Congressman. So, as you all know, we ran late to the town hall earlier, so right now I have last two questions because I don't see any other hands. So we have, I already took the last two questions, so I have Khải Đào, and then Vũ Hoàng Lân, and then Jacqueline Kim Trúc as the last three questions. Khải Đào.
Yes, sir, Khải Đào, Việt Ngữ Forum. I'm also a candidate for City Council of the City of Westminster. Regarding our coming election, in light of the current impeachment about Russia meddling with our electoral system, this question is for Mr. Ambassador as well as Mr. Congressman. The City Council of Westminster currently allege or accuse the Vietnamese government of interfering with our government, trying to dispose of them. And as ambassador, will you officially verify or confront the Vietnamese government with this allegation? And also, what would each of you do about this, if this accusation is true or false?
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, let me say I'm delighted to be here in Little Saigon today. I know nothing about these allegations, and before today I'd heard nothing about those allegations, so I simply don't know anything about the situation. I'm happy to try to educate myself on the situation, but I don't know anything about it, and so there's really nothing that there's no comment that I can make.
One thing, though, this is not just an allegation, it's a very serious matter when one government trying to interfere with another government.
I think you have to respect when the ambassador, you have to respect when the ambassador answer you your question. So, so I have.
Mr. Congressman, I'd like.
No, I agree. I would like to learn more about that, and we'll follow up with you.
Thank you. Anh Vũ Hoàng Linh.
Vũ Hoàng Lân từ PhoBolsaTV, tôi xin hỏi tiếng Việt và nhờ anh. Liên quan tới vụ Đồng Tâm, xã Mỹ Đức thì vụ này thì nhiều người cho rằng là và tố cáo rằng đây là một vụ mà chính quyền Việt Nam đàn áp và cướp đất và giết chết, từ đó giết chết một người ở trong làng, đó là ông Lê Đình Kình. Ngược lại thì phía Việt Nam cho rằng đây là cái việc họ rất là bình thường trấn áp tội phạm, thậm chí trong trường hợp này đối với họ là khủng bố. Vậy thì tôi muốn hỏi câu hỏi rằng là ông cho biết một cách rất rõ ràng cái quan điểm của Hoa Kỳ, cái quan điểm của ông về cái việc này. Ông nghiêng về phía nào trong hai cái lý luận này? Ông đã tới xã Đồng Tâm để tìm hiểu hay chưa? Hoặc là có tính sẽ tới tìm hiểu hay chưa? Thưa ông.
Thank you. So the question is relating to what's happening in Đồng Tâm, Vietnam. There's one view that what's happening in Đồng Tâm is a violation of human rights. It's a case of government land grab and using force to seize the land from the people, and in the process killing Mr. Lê Đình Kình as a crime. And then from the Vietnamese government side, their view on the issue is this is a normal process that happens a lot of time in Vietnam when the government is enforcing the law and they denounce, the resistance as, violence against the government, or even terrorist act against the government. So, from the ambassador's view, what is your view of what's going on in Vietnam? Do you take one side or the other on stance on this issue? Have you been to Đồng Tâm, and do you have plans to go there?
Well, thank you for your question. We continue to follow the situation in Đồng Tâm very closely. As I mentioned in the town hall, we've been deeply concerned that this long-standing dispute has now resulted in violence and the loss of life. We call on all sides involved in the dispute to resolve these problems peacefully and in accordance with the law. One of our responsibilities as diplomats is to try to understand developments in the country to which we're posted, and we've certainly done that here. And we have talked with various individuals and with the Vietnamese government to understand the different views on this unfortunate matter. We'll continue to follow it closely. We'll continue to speak out in support of resolving these challenges peacefully, and we certainly have expressed our regret over the loss of life, and we'll continue to do that going forward.
Are you planning to go to the village?
I don't have any plans to go to Đồng Tâm village, no.
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador. Next
Not currently, certainly.
Thank you, Ambassador. Next is nhà báo Lê Kim Trúc.
Sir, Ambassador, I am very glad to meet you. Number one question. Sự kiện mà diễn ra, xin hỏi ý kiến của ngài đại sứ là lý do tại sao chính phủ Hoa Kỳ không ký vào bản công ước Liên Hiệp Quốc United Nations Convention of Law of the Sea UNCLOS 1982. Cái điều này nó có hàm chứa cái việc mà những cái cuộc thảo luận giữa Việt Nam và Trung Quốc, Asian và Trung Quốc, nếu mà dựa trên cái UNCLOS này đều có giá trị hay không?
Ambassador, would you please explain why the U.S. government did not sign the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, in 1982? Does that mean the agreement among China and ASEAN countries, namely the Code of Conduct, based on UNCLOS, is invalid?
Thank you. Well, look, situation regarding UNCLOS 1982 is that the U.S. Senate has not yet ratified America's joining the UNCLOS 1982, but as a matter of customary international law, we respect the principles that are enshrined in UNCLOS 1982, and it continues to guide U.S. government actions and U.S. military operations. As to whether that has any impact on the code of conduct, no, in our view, it absolutely does not. Every country in the world has an obligation to respect international law, both customary international law and those principles of customary international law enshrined directly in UNCLOS 1982. Every country has an obligation to respect those laws, to act in accordance with those laws, not to act on the principle of might makes right, not to act on the principle of the strong can bully the weak. The challenge as we see it in the South China Sea is that all countries, including China, need to base their claims in international law, need to pursue those claims peacefully, need to resolve claims peacefully, should not carry out activities designed to impede normal commerce and regular exploration and development of energy resources in the South China Sea. That has been America's position on these issues for decades and will continue to be so for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Ambassador. And now the last question for our press conference from Nữ vòng Trái Đất.
Được biết ông là vị đại sứ Mỹ ở Việt Nam đầu tiên trong lịch sử đến nghĩa trang Trường Sơn ở tại Việt Nam. Thì nhất là
nghĩa trang gì anh?
Nghĩa trang quân đội Trường Sơn ở tại Việt Nam, ở ngoài Bắc. Thì năm nay là năm kỷ niệm 25 năm quan hệ Việt Nam và Hoa Kỳ, cũng như là 45 năm kết thúc cuộc chiến Việt Nam. Thì không biết là bên phía Hoa Kỳ sẽ làm có những cái hành động cụ thể nào để làm cả cái công việc là hàn gắn giữa hai nước sau cái cuộc chiến này, sau 45 năm.
He's aware that you are the first U.S. ambassador to visit the military cemetery in Trường Sơn in northern Vietnam.
Yes.
And that given that this is the 25th anniversary of normalization of the two countries and also the 45th anniversary since the end of the war, what does the U.S. have any plan to do to push for the reconciliation between the two countries given this occasion?
Well, thank you for your question. I really appreciate that. I've been honored as the U.S. Ambassador to Vietnam. I've had the honor of going to the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C. I've had the honor of twice visiting the Bien Hoa Cemetery outside of Ho Chi Minh City dedicated to fallen ARVN soldiers. And I had the honor last year becoming the first American ambassador to visit the Chung Son National Martyrs Cemetery dedicated to fallen soldiers from northern Vietnam. As I mentioned during my visit to Chung Son, my intention was in a spirit of reconciliation and mutual respect to come and to honor those on all sides who fell during the war in the name of patriotism. And I think on this 25th anniversary year and 45 years after the end of the war, I think that's the right thing to do. I think that reconciliation is an important endeavor that we should all be engaged in. I've also had the privilege while the American ambassador to Vietnam to develop new relationships with the Vietnam Veterans Association. I've had the pleasure to be involved in activities in which former American veterans from the Vietnam War have come to Vietnam, have visited the places where they fought, and in many instances have met their northern Vietnamese counterparts who fought against them in various battles. And to see the reconciliation that's taken place throughout those visits, to see the emotional reaction on both sides, continues to motivate me to do everything that we can to promote reconciliation between our two countries. And let me just hasten to add, reconciliation doesn't mean forgetting about the past. We continue to believe that the only way we can continue to build this relationship and build trust is to by squarely and honestly addressing those issues from the past. Making important, meaningful, and symbolic visits to cemeteries like Bien Hoa Cemetery and Chung Son Cemetery. Carrying out activities designed to account for missing on both sides, on all sides. Carrying out activities to try to clean up the remaining dioxin contamination or unexploded ordnance and mines from the war, to help to treat Vietnamese with disabilities, including in the 7 provinces most heavily sprayed by Agent Orange. I think all of those activities contribute to building trust, mutual understanding, and reconciliation. I think that helps improve the relationship between our two countries, and we're committed to continuing to do so going forward. This is the 25th anniversary of the normalization of relations. We have a number of activities planned throughout the year. We think it's a meaningful time to reflect on the progress that's been made in the last 25 years. It's a time to identify new opportunities we can seize in the coming 25 years, but also to rededicate ourselves to addressing the challenges here that we've also identified here today. But I really do appreciate your question.
Yeah, I'd like to add one thing to your list of things to do.
Please,
because
yes,
you
sir.
have this great list, and I really appreciate what you're doing. And that is, in my understanding, is that after the fall of Saigon and the end of the war, a number of Vietnamese who fought for the Republic of Vietnam, who were not eligible because either of injuries or others to leave the country, went to these re-education programs and camps, and many of them died there, and they're not buried at all. And part of the Bien Hoa Cemetery, the restoration, is to recover those bodies who were left in those re-education camps and never had a proper funeral.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Representative Lowenthal, for raising that. I've heard a little bit about that, and some of the same people who have worked on the refurbishment of Bien Hoa Cemetery have mentioned that issue to me, but I don't know very much about that. I'd be happy to look into that. It sounds like a very important issue, very meaningful. Thank you.
So we come to the end of the press conference. Ambassador, Congressman, any last word before we take the time?
Well, again, I first want to again thank Representative Lowenthal for organizing today's town hall. I want to thank all the members of the media and the members of the Vietnamese American community for spending time on a work day to help educate me about the concerns and interests that this community has in Vietnam. I'm so excited and honored to be here in Little Saigon. This is my first trip here, but it won't be my last. I've learned a lot. I'm very grateful to all of you. I look forward to coming back someday very soon. Thank you.
No, I just want to say
everyone.
Just to thank the ambassador for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
There's some water here if anyone likes to get some. And thank you, everyone, for covering today's event. Appreciate it.
Như vậy là cuộc họp báo vừa mới chấm dứt. Hy vọng là chúng tôi với những câu hỏi của các nhà báo ở quận Cam đã đem lại những cái thông tin nhiều mặt cho khán giả về những câu trả lời, những cái quan điểm của ông đại sứ Hoa Kỳ tại Việt Nam. Tường thuật chấm dứt ở đây ngay tại thành phố Garden Grove. Xin kính chào và hẹn gặp lại.